Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Research and Innovation Week. Thank you all for joining us today. I'm excited to introduce Janet Moore. Janet and her team this afternoon will be talking about the Collaborative for Transdisciplinary Justice and Transformation. And this is an exciting project that she has a team of co-presenters with her as well this afternoon. So without further ado, I'm going to kick it over to Janet.
Thanks, Tony, and thanks, Margot, for helping to make this happen, and to the Office of Research for generously funding this project. What I'd like to do is we're going to say our names quickly, the folks who are here. I'm Janet Moore. I teach at the College of Law, and I'm the PI on this project. Ebony, can you say who you are and what you're doing?
Yeah, my name's Ebony Ruhland, and I'm an assistant professor in criminal justice here at UC, and I am a co-I on the project.
And Cinnamon.
Good afternoon. I'm Cinnamon Pelly. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Urban League of Greater Southwestern Ohio, and I am a co-conspirator on this project.
And Brendan, he was here in the room with me.
Hi, everybody. My name is Brendan Mathews, and I'm a law student here at UC and also working on my PhD in epidemiology, and I'm one of our process evaluators on the project.
Thanks, everybody, and thanks all the folks in the room for being here. I'm gonna give a quick project overview, and then I'm gonna ask Dr. Ruhland and Ms. Pelly and Brendan to say a few words about what brought them to the project and what their experiences with it have been so far. And hopefully that'll tee up some thoughts for y'all to engage in some Q&A, because we're interested in your responses to the project, of course. So I'm going to share my screen now and do a PowerPoint. Let me make sure that I can pull this off. So it's 21st century technology. Yeah. All right. We good? Everybody see that? See some slides up there? Okay, away we go. All right. So we've got a big group on this project, and everybody can't be here today, but we do have Dr. Ruhland and Cinnamon and Brendan here. And in addition, the people who are not in the room, just so you know, our co-investigator, Dr. Farah Jaquas in the Department of Psychology, plus 9 other graduate students who are either in law or law and medicine or law and social work or criminal justice. And then 17 collaborative members in addition to Ms. Pelly. We have 6 academics from different disciplines, 6 community organizer or leaders of community organizations like Ms. Pelly, 6 in-system folks, system officials, inside criminal justice system officials, and then 2 consultants, Dr. Lisa Vaughn, who's been assisting us with workshop design and facilitation, and Simone Bess, who is working on our team evaluation. So it's kind of a cast of thousands. And you'll see in a moment why we had the great fortune to gather all these people together. It's because we are tackling a wicked problem, the United States criminal justice crisis, and trying to identify alternatives to prevent and address harm. We're putting it in different ways. How can we reduce the need for criminal justice systems? How can we put criminal justice systems out of business by building healthy people and communities? And this is what transdisciplinary researchers call a wicked problem. It gained broader attention after George Floyd's murder sparked unprecedented global protests and new demands for justice transformation through strength-based public health prevention approaches that are supported actually by majorities of public opinion, even during tough on crime eras, and by about 2 centuries worth of research. And yet, despite all this support and all this work, the United States remains a global leader in high rates of violence, in punitive severity, and in underfunding of social safety nets, with the harms falling disproportionately on low-income people, Black people, and other people of color. Repeated reform efforts have tended to kind of nibble around the edges and oil the machinery instead of really addressing underlying structural issues in an effective and sustainable way. And why is this so? Well, research tells us it's because it's a complicated problem. It's a wicked problem. We're incarcerated by ideologies, by institutional structures, by vested interests in the status quo, by just plain old inertia, and by some intransigence. So this is a wicked problem that demands an all hands on deck response. And that's our goal with CatJet. The Collaborative for Transdisciplinary Justice Transformation is an exploratory project that tries to bring together people from across differences, to break down walls and silos, to build connections and capacity, and to advance knowledge and action. And who are we bringing together? Brenda, could you close that door if it's not closed? Thank you. We're bringing together academics from across different disciplines, as I mentioned, with organizers and leaders of community organizations who with different relevant topic areas as their focus of their work. And then with folks who are inside these systems, be they legislators, thank you, who are crafting the statutes and ordinances that criminalize conduct and define how these systems work. The police, who are charged with law enforcement, harm prevention, responding to harm, prosecutors, public defense lawyers, wardens, probation officers, those sorts of folks. So it's like more than a three-way chess game, bringing all these folks together. We're bridging a lot of differences here, and we are doing so with the aim, again, of creating transdisciplinary justice transformation collaboratives that can build new analytical frameworks, generate new theoretical lenses, right? And use those new creative outside the box ways of thinking to inform action, to identify top priorities, specific, feasible, high impact action plans to promote real sustainable justice transformation. So we've got two questions for this project. First, what does a collaborative transdisciplinary group prioritize as actions to reduce the need for criminal legal systems? And second, how does a collaborative transdisciplinary group build bridges to get the work done? What helps the work move forward? What gets in the way? What hinders the work? Those are really our two major questions. And so the activities that aim to help us answer these questions, first is a set of virtual facilitated workshops, and then COVID permitting, an in-person conference. This is going to answer the what. What's the substance that this group produces in terms of prioritized action areas to put criminal justice systems out of business? And that's interesting. That's interesting. But I've always been more interested in the how. Like, what is it that enables people to bridge these many differences that exist across these the spaces that folks are coming from and the multiple identities that they bring to the table. So the how is being answered by participant feedback on the CatJet process through surveys and interviews. And this is where the law and the CJ graduate students are pivotal, because they are helping us to gather and to assess those data. The work product will include, of course, the action plans that the collaborative produces, but also a toolkit for others who are interested in doing similar work. And then we're aiming to share other co-learning through different media for different audiences, be those policy white papers, op-eds, social media, which I do not understand, and that's where the students are really going to be helpful as well, standard academic publications, papers, book chapters, and so forth, and to continue the work, grant proposals as well. So what have we accomplished so far? We've had two, am I right? 2 of the virtual workshops so far, 2 of 4. Yeah. Yes. All right. So we had our first major 3-hour virtual workshop with everybody at the table, and we had excellent participation in that. During that workshop, the folks generated these 3 major action areas that you are seeing here: mutual thriving and flourishing, busting pipelines that lead people into these systems and keep them inside them, and then restorative justice. And each of these, they said, we need to be including and bringing to bear analysis of these 3 overarching themes. First, of systemic racism and poverty. Second, community capacity building. And third, cross-agency collaboration. So these are priority substantive areas that the group generated in the first workshop. And then in the second one, we took this I'm not prioritizing them. This action area, mutual thriving and flourishing, And the participants had the group had an opportunity to drill down into that to identify through fish boning, you could call it fish boning, we altered it a little bit, sort of causal links to drill down and try to get to a specific feasible action that could then advance mutual thriving and flourishing in order to put criminal justice systems out of business. So our next workshop will do a very similar process with the busting pipelines action area. And then the final virtual workshop will focus on do similar work with the restorative justice area. And based on all that work in those action areas, then during the in-person conference in June, folks will come together and really then have a chance to work together with a less compressed time frame to work up some action plans. So that's our story. That's what we're doing. And what I'd like to do now is to turn to Dr. Ruhland, Ms. Pelly, and Brendan, and just give you each an opportunity to please say a bit about what brought you to the project and a bit about your experience with it so far. And so, Dr. Ruhland, if you'd like to kick us off, please.
Sure. So I guess what brought me to the project is I have been working in criminal justice for many years. I started in direct service, started as a juvenile correctional officer and a probation officer, and then moved to the more academic side of it, and now an assistant professor. And so I have been part of these conversations for many, many years, looking at racial disparities in the criminal justice system and looking at the mass incarceration and mass probation and the number of people involved in the system. And there'd always be these groups, and we'd sit around and we talk, and we're like, what can we do to reduce disparities? What can we do to reduce the population in the criminal justice system? And it's just always like speaking to the choir, like everybody understands that we need to do something. And then we sit around, and then the next thing happens, the next shooting happens, and a group convenes, or the next, tragedy happens. And so it's so frustrating each year to see this. And it's so frustrating that why isn't there change? Why isn't there movement? So what brought me to this project is really that we need to sort of talk outside of our silos. We need to talk outside of not only people that agree with us, but also people in different disciplines. And so I think that this is a unique project in that we have different disciplines, people from all over, as Janet showed on one of the slides. But we also have people with different orientations, different ways in which they think about this problem. So I think that is exciting. And the other exciting thing about this project is we are coming up with action plans to put the criminal justice system out of business. I think that it may sound like a controversial thing to put the criminal justice system out of business, but I think that that's what everybody wants. Hopefully that's what police officers want and probation officers in prisons. Like ultimately we want to be out of business. And so I think that we are going to come up with good concrete action steps to do that, so that we're just not again sitting around talking about this thing, until the next tragedy happens. And we can't wait. I mean, people are dying, people are, sitting in prison for many, many years. And so we need action plans. I think that answered your question. Was there anything else I was supposed to talk about?
Maybe just say a few words about your experience with the project so far.
Yeah, so my experience has been, and the group that we have is a very great group. They're in high demand in their fields. They're constantly thinking about this issue from the frameworks from which they are a part of, and the fact that they all signed on to say yes, they want to be a part of this, and the fact that they have come to each of our sessions, and we all are like tired of sitting on Zoom for 3 hours. I mean, we're tired of Zoom overall for all of our meetings, but to sit on Zoom for 3 hours in one meeting and really dissect these issues, and were completely engaged in the process. And even in the evaluations at the end said they needed more time. They wanted more time to really work on these issues. So I think what I find is exciting is that people are coming and they're coming engaged, and we're tackling really complex issues, and we're not always agreeing with each other. We're seeing these things differently, and there's some tension within the group, but it's a good tension because these are really complicated problems to solve. And I think that, you know, if we wouldn't be realistic if we weren't having tensions and having struggles about solving these issues. So I guess what I really appreciate is that, you know, everybody is extremely busy, but the fact that they have agreed to give us so many hours to work on this is really great and exciting.
Thank you, Dr. Ruhland. Ms. Pelly, you want to say a few words about what brought you to the project and your experience with it so far?
Sure. So I think initially it was the invitation of a friend and neighbor, the Iris Rowley invited and hosted at Pastor Lynch's church. So, you know, I was coming regardless, but the more I found out about the program, the more I was personally invested in the research project and the actions. So part of the why for me was just coming off of, you know, another summer of tragedy. We had what happened with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, and seems like every week there's some sort of ridiculous tragedy that's happening. And I think in my community, it's something that we've known for years, right? So I think the difference is that now we have the means by which to capture and record and provide visual representations of how egregious the harm and impact to the Black community is. So for me, it's both a personal and professional passion. I mean, personally, I identify as a Black woman. I have brothers and sisters and cousins and aunts and uncles who the research shows us that at all stages of the criminal justice system, most of the harm disproportionately impacts Black bodies. So it's a very practical reason for self-preservation of myself and those that I love and I care about. And then professionally, you know, these are the neighbors and the community members that I serve, that, you know, involvement, that disproportional contact with the criminal justice system just manifests itself in so many harmful ways, both during the process and then after. And so I'm action oriented. I like to complain and make sure you know where I think there's stuff going wrong and there needs to be improvement, but I'm also a roll your sleeves up type of gal. And after sitting through years and years and years of research projects that seem to approach community and want to do something to us, want to poke and prod and study us, this felt like a project that actually wanted to be a conversation with community, with non-traditional researchers and academics to really try to center those folks that are most proximate to the problem to get down to some solutions. So I am super excited about the really smart, really diverse group that's been gathered. And I hope that all of these efforts are used to chip away at what we know is causing so much harm in search of a better solution for community problem solving. And that's my why.
Thank you. Thank you. Did you want to say anything about your experience so far with the virtual workshops, Cinnamon?
Yeah, so I might be the only one that is not sick of Zoom. Sick of Zoom in terms of I feel like my capacity to do work has increased because you can just literally turn on, you know, open your laptop and boom, you're in a meeting. I really am an introvert at heart, so I appreciate being able to be on Zoom and then to be out of the situation. So I've really enjoyed it. I think the different disciplines and life experiences and job functions that show up in these conversations have stretched our conversation to new and innovative ideas or just different ways of approaching the work or thinking about the work. There's been some uncomfortable spots, but the group has been very candid and open about what they think are some of the challenges so that we can try to devise solutions that are realistic and can actually work. So I've been pleasantly surprised. I've met folks right here in my own hometown, here where I live in Cincinnati, but also from across the country who are professionals that are equally as passionate about trying to address some of these issues. So I'm excited about what how this work has grown and evolved, and hopefully it'll continue to touch folks in other disciplines, because I think it's going to take all of us to really affect the change we want to see.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, Brandon, you're up. Can you talk a little bit about what brought you to the project and your experience with it so far?
Absolutely. And so before I came to law school, I was working as a perinatal and social epidemiologist for the state of Kentucky. And a lot of the work that I did was focusing on health disparities, particularly for women of color and for immigrants that are interacting with criminal justice systems and our immigration systems. How are those policies impacting health? And as we've kind of talked about so far, when you're stuck within your own discipline, you're in this ideological echo chamber. Everybody's kind of thinking the same way. You're coming up with these solutions, these action items that you think might work, but oftentimes what we as academics or practitioners come up with maybe don't translate into the best things for the communities that we're serving and working with. And so what draws me to this project is that it is something that directly challenges those silos. It breaks them down. It gets messy and nitty gritty, and you butt heads sometimes, and everybody's thinking, in different ways. They're bringing their own lived experiences, their professional experiences, and you're doing this all together to reach these workable, actionable solutions that actually will impact and benefit the people that we're serving and working with, and hopefully improve the systems that we're hoping to target. And so that's the primary thing that brought me to this project. And in reflecting on the project so far, it's been amazing to see all of that kind of in action. In some previous research that I've done, where it's kind of been all within discipline, we just don't get the same level of workable and tangible solutions that really address these root causes. So it's been really amazing to see how such a wide array of lived experiences and perspectives are coming together to actually impact systems and people.
So I want to just say a word about what brought this project to mind. I was a capital defense attorney, and it didn't take long for this ignorant middle-class white girl to figure out that the world works really differently for people outside of what had been my range of experience. And I was also deeply struck by, just from a very pragmatic utilitarian perspective, how pennies on the dollar investments in the lives of my clients could have prevented so much harm, so much terrible harm, the terrible harm that they did to people and to communities in the longer run. And it struck me as madness. So after doing that work for a good long while and working on some policy reform work, then I came to the law school and really wanted to find who my people were in other disciplines, because as a law trained person with some humanities background, I didn't have the empirical research capacity to do the drill downs and to build the partnerships that I wanted to build. And Ebony has been an important part of that work. Dr. Ruhland has been an important part of that work. Other folks in CJ, in education, in psychology, have been an important part of these projects. And through that work over the time here, and with the generous support of the Office of Research, I've had opportunities to really expand my framework of thinking. And so the sort of instincts that I had, I found, oh, well, that's actually kind of an approach to doing research, transdisciplinarity, action research, where you're working with, co-learning with people who are affected by these systems. So all that has been percolating in the background, led to a couple of projects preliminary to this one, that this one is building on. One was Reclaiming Safety, in which Cinnamon was deeply involved from really the beginning and through the production of publications, the first one of which will be coming out in Stanford's Journal of Civil Rights and Civil Liberties. It's one of the top tier specialty journals in law, and it's new stuff. I mean, bringing transdisciplinary collaborative action research into the criminal justice arena. It's extremely rare in law. It's extremely rare in criminal justice. And so as far as we've been able to tell, what we're doing right now, building on reclaiming safety in this way, is a new thing. And I just want to say one other thing about a couple of activities that have spun off since they weren't in the grant proposal, but they've turned out to be, I think, pretty effective. One was the development of a course, a short course for the law at the law school, basically on this project. And through that course, we recruited the set of students who are working now as members of the research team with the data collection and assessment work. And then they'll help us with some other stuff too. And I think that was a good experience. The class was very well received. The work that they created was really wonderful. And then Dr. Vaughn, who's our consultant on the workshop development and design and facilitation, helped us to do some concept mapping. And so that has spun off. The students did a preliminary concept mapping project with a sort of a subset question of the overarching questions that we're asking the folks in this project. And the results were really interesting. And now they are energized to do that as a complement to what a bigger concept mapping project as a complement to what this group is producing by tapping a wider range of participants outside of this particular group. So those are a couple of new developments, and it's been really fascinating and satisfying to see that, because I'm absolutely persuaded that it's the development of this next generation capacity, which is well on its way. They are looking at things in a new way, but having them be able to bridge these academic and other gaps, bridge those, break down those silos, is a really important and satisfying component of this work. So I see that there's maybe at least one question already posted in chat. More questions are absolutely welcome.
Yeah, and thank you so much, Janet and team, for a wonderful overview of the project. Why don't we get into some questions, since I do see some coming in. I had some come directly to me as well, and I actually have one as well. So I'll start with mine, and this is just for the group. You're really tackling some very complex problems and very intricate problems. Can you tell me, or can you tell the audience, what are some of your largest barriers, or maybe pinpoint a barrier? You talked about silo busting, which is, I presume, a very big barrier in the beginning, but are there others that you're confronting that are your largest barriers at this point?
I'm going to defer to my co-panelists to take the first crack at this.
I think one of the barriers that comes to mind is, I think, doing transdisciplinary work, it sounds great, but it is a challenge. I mean, we're coming at it from different perspectives and languages. So I think there's, and so that we're starting from an equal footing, maybe, or we have our area of expertise. So sometimes we get down a path and we'll be talking about something related to the criminal justice system. We'll be using acronyms. We'll talk about laws. And then like the mental health people will be like, whoa, what are you talking about? And so we have to sort of reel it back and back up. One of the groups that I was in, we were talking about mental health and how that leads to a bunch of, involvement into the system, mental and substance abuse. They were going down into like insurance reimbursements and like went way down into this well about that. And I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. So I think that it's good because we're learning from each other, but then it's also hard to do this sort of work quickly because we do need to back up and make sure we're all on the same page. So that's one challenge I see that comes to mind.
Yeah, I would echo what Dr. Ruhland said. I think having common language and definitions certainly is a challenge, just because of the sheer diversity of who's around the table. I think the other opportunity, because I'm asset-based, Tony, the other opportunity that I think that we have is to get closer and closer to actually involving in the conversations people that have been disproportionately impacted by the criminal systems. How I would love for more young Black men that have had those experiences or are having those experiences to be in the room. because that's really who is up close and personal and dealing with the impact of it, and probably could be a world of insight on the harm and ways to undo that. And then finally, I would say just the time constraints. There is just so many places where we can have impact. There's so much to understand and learn. The system is so vast and broad that trying to condense it down to these work sessions, even the 3 hours seem to have just zipped by. You know, when if you want to go fast, go alone, the African proverb says, but if you want to go far, go together. But going far also means you got to go slower, because you got to bring everybody with you. And while I think this is the right way to get the type of innovative, comprehensive solutions we're looking for, it also means that time is something that we don't have the luxury of.
Wonderful. And I actually have a nice kind of follow-up question that was submitted by the audience. And it kind of aligns with what you all were touching on already. So how do you manage expectations when working with such a large and diverse group? I could envision everyone wants to see progress yesterday, but a wicked problem usually requires several iterations or alternative approaches before you really see impact.
Yeah, I'll dive into that. I do want to hear your observations about the challenges and opportunities too, Brendan. So stressing that this is exploratory has been important, and acknowledging upfront, this is ridiculous. I mean, we are trying to move from boiling the ocean, right, to specific concrete actions while simultaneously bridging all these differences, right? And in 15 hours, I mean, who thought that was a good idea, right? And so just acknowledging that openly and saying, we're saving every single idea that is being communicated here. Those ideas are not being lost. And this is just a first step. And as far as we can tell, nobody else has tried this. And so everything we do, everything we learn, everything we share is going to be hopefully helping to advance this work going forward. So combining, I guess, modesty with ambition, but being really open about that, to me, is one way to handle it. Others may have other ideas.
I mean, I would just add that I think we are promising action at the end of this, because I do think that everybody on this that has said yes, I mean, they are busy people, and the last thing we want to do is waste their time. And so I think, we just keep that too at the front, like, this is not for nothing. This is not another group that, at the end of this, we're going to just have a report. And that's why when Janet showed, we're going to have different dissemination strategies, and different things matter for different people. So for some people, the policy papers are going to be important. For some people, the toolkit's going to be important. And so we really want them to, like, whatever you need to get out of this as well, we want to honor that too. So hopefully they that allows for buy-in and contribution.
Thank you. Another question: what other avenues do you see for student engagement, whether undergrad, grad, or professional students?
Sure. Yeah, so in looking at student engagement, I think because this is a transdisciplinary project and it's exploratory, we have a lot more of a potential to branch out into other disciplines even. Right now, a lot of the people that we're working with are people from law or people from public health, but we can explore education some more. We can explore other disciplines where students are able to bring their lived experiences and their academic experiences into this work, both as people serving on the research team, but also collaborating with them either through concept mapping projects or doing sessions like we're doing with the current participants with different people that have different experiences. So I think that could be a really, really interesting and unique kind of way to engage with students.
Great, thank you. Here's a good question. I'd be interested to hear how you go about getting buy-in and commitment from folks directly affiliated with the criminal justice system, such as police, probation officers, despite their jobs being funded from these systems.
Right. So I've been frankly astonished at the enthusiasm with which our invitation has been met. It's stunning. It was really difficult to get prosecutors, primarily because they're so swamped. Prosecutors, like everybody else in the system, are overloaded. And also it's politically dicey, right, for prosecutors in some offices to participate in something like this. So personal and professional relationships for this iteration of this project have been important with respect to system players. I've had a lot of experience working with different system players in different settings. And so that helped to be sort of a trusted broker kind of. I think I'm speaking on behalf of those folks. I'm telling you what they told me about why they were willing to participate, right? It was the substance of it that was interesting to them. And Dr. Ruhland's exactly right. Anybody that spent any time in these systems, I can promise you, you wake up one morning and you say, this is ridiculous. What could I do if I really wanted to put myself out of business? People are thinking about this. So there's that. But there's also having some relationships of trust for an exploratory project like this. That helped.
But I also think, just to add, that probably was our hardest recruitment, as Janet said. It did take relationships. It did take a lot of explanation about what the project is and is not. And I think that it takes a lot of, like, even in the group, to have like group norms and rules and how are we going to communicate? What does this all mean? So I think the other part of this, we talked about, like, solving the problem takes a lot of time, but also like bringing this project together takes a lot of time and takes a lot of thought on how we do it right. And so I think that we've been slow and steady with that as well. And it hasn't been easy, but I think those established relationships in the past have helped bring them to the table now.
Another question that came in directly to me. Are you working with any other university law centers or who might be doing similar projects?
We ransacked the universe and we haven't been able to find anybody that's doing anything like this. When we presented the Stanford paper in a couple of different milieu, and it's just news. Law and is typically law and economics, and it's typically coming out of the University of Chicago. And there's some really interesting work that they're doing, but it's not transdisciplinary. It's not whatever label you want to put on this, community engaged, community driven, participatory action research. It's not that. And it's also not in the CJ setting, right? So we're plowing new ground. And that's the message that I have heard from all of my colleagues around the country when they're looking at these papers that we're producing and hearing about this project. So I'd love that. Somebody tell me where they are, because I haven't found them.
Thank you. We've efficiently got through all of the questions in there. Would the team like to do any closing remarks, as we're coming near to time, but wanted to give you an opportunity to do that?
Cinnamon, you want to kick us off with closing inspirations?
Sure. I probably had a bad joke queued up for Tony when we heard the siren in the background.
I saw that as soon as I said that.
I was like, wow, look at that timing. Closing remarks. I would just like to invite more folks into the work. While it's already transdisciplinary, the group that's been gathered, there is so much more room for other players and thoughts and innovations and approaches to how this system intersects with everything else that touches us in life. It's no surprise that the United States is the most incarcerated country by far in the world. And it has an effect on everybody, whether or not you are directly engaging with these systems. You're being touched by the impact and what's happening. So I think it's a question of our humanity, how we treat each other, how we begin a path to reconciliation, how we deal with our problems outside of locking people up and throwing away the key. And so I would just invite more folks, especially from the academia, to get involved where you can and make something happen. It's also a way I personally manage my own expectations, is that in addition to the conversations I've been invited to by Janet and Dr. Ruhland, I'm also doing what I can in my own neighborhood council and, the NAACP and whatever group has assembled to try to address some of these unfortunate outcomes. We just need people to stand up and get educated and take a stand. So I think that would be it.
Any
Shall I
others?
call on someone?
Yeah, go ahead. Pass the ball.
So you come off of mute, Janet. Would you or Brendan like to give some closing remarks?
Yeah, so very recently here at the law school, I founded a new student organization, the Health and Public Health Law Society. And in doing that work, a lot of kind of what I've already begun to do is look at transdisciplinary work in the law and kind of inspired by this project. So something right now that I'm getting ready to have a speaker come in and talk about is disability rights in prisons and how disabled individuals disproportionately face wrongful convictions in our criminal justice systems. And so these conversations that we're having in this group, it's this transdisciplinary toolkit, and these conversations are broadening all of our horizons as participants and as members of the research team. And so this work is so valuable in so many different facets and capacities of our lives. So it's really, really amazing to be a part of this team and happy to see this research going.
Thanks, Brendan. Dr. Ruhland, did you want to speak a piece?
I have nothing to add. I just want to thank everybody for coming to the talk, and thank you for your questions as well, because your questions have already made me think about this issue differently and think about how we approach the problem. So I just echo what Cinnamon said. If you want to be involved, please do, because it is all hands on deck sort of problem. So thank you.
What they said.
Well, thank you all for the time and informing this audience on your project. It's very great to hear the great work that you're all doing. So we're about to wrap here, but I just wanted to remind everyone that we've recorded this, and we're going to post all of these recordings to every one of the programs to our Research and Innovation Week page after the Research and Innovation Week concludes this week. So you'll be able to see recordings of these, share these if you missed a portion of this, or you want to share this with your stakeholders or colleagues or friends. There's going to be some really great post-event content that you can share with all of them. And thank you all again so much for your time, and have a great rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.